Jeff, Jim, and Carmela, Part 30. Carmela's mother and dad did not know what to think, and Mehmet, when he picked them up at the Istanbul airport, was speechless when he saw Jim. Mehmet said he needed to pinch Jim to make sure he was real and not a ghost. Mehmet was not undercover at the airport anymore. He was working in Turkish headquarters. When he found out Carmela was coming back to Istanbul, he received permission to pick Carmela and Jim up with a Turkish government staff car. Jim was wondering how things would turn out when Mehmet reported to his supervisors about Jim looking identical to Jeff. Jim knew the people dealing in the spy game would try and recruit him. Jim was starting to worry about not having a choice in the matter. When Carmela and Jim walked into Frank and Della's home, Carmela's mother just stared at Jim, not believing what she was seeing. Frank said he could not believe two people could look identical. Della told Carmela she was probably the only girl in the world that something like this had happened to. Frank could not resist, so he asked Jim if he had total recall, like his brother. When Frank asked Jim this, Jim became silent and hesitated before he answered. All eyes were on Jim, and a chill came over Carmela because she wondered the same thing. But this was the only thing she had not asked Jim. The room became deathly quiet as they were staring at Jim. Finally, Jim said, "Yes, but I have never revealed to anyone that I have total recall. Carmela told me Jeff had total recall, and I assumed it was just a matter of time before someone asked me that question." Carmela's dad walked up to Jim and looked him square in the eye. He told Jim to keep that hidden, or MI7 would be after him to replace his brother Jeff. This revelation made Carmela begin to regret bringing Jim to Istanbul to meet her folks. She told her dad she did not have any idea they would be trying to get Jim to take the place of Jeff. Jim told Carmela not to worry about that because he needed to meet Frank and Della regardless of all the international intrigue. Carmela looked out the window to see if Mehmet had departed, which he had. She turned to Jim and said, "Mehmet has probably already reported seeing you to his headquarters. I do not know exactly the kind of mission Jeff was coordinating. The only thing I know, it was a combined mission with MI7 and Turkish intelligence." Carmela looked worried, and she continued to apologize for being so stupid as to bring Jim, I almost said Jeff, to bring Jim to Istanbul. "Jim, they will be after you, and this means we must get out of Turkey as soon as possible." Carmela's dad was in full agreement, and her mother was nodding her head in agreement. Frank said the intelligence agencies would do anything to prevent Jim from leaving Turkey. His well-being was not in jeopardy, but his freedom as a radio announcer was gone forever. Frank said it would probably be impossible to get out of the country by normal means because all the points of transportation out of Turkey would have him on their list of people to be detained. Jim and Frank began to think of the problem and how they could smuggle Jim and Carmela out of the country. Frank had a friend who owned a large cabin cruiser, and they could try to go through the Dardanelles into the Mediterranean. Della said that would be a long shot, and she thought it would be easier to cross the border into Bulgaria. Carmela continued to apologize and take the blame for this predicament. She said she should have known Jim would cause some of the intelligence people to be interested in an exact copy of Jeff, one of their best operatives. Carmela mentioned Margot, Omar's girlfriend from the club, where Jeff had listened to the Turkish folk group. Frank asked Carmela if this was the girl you mentioned that was the girlfriend of Omar. Carmela said he was the smuggler that Jeff used for some information that resulted in the Turks classing Jeff a hero. Carmela said she had forgotten about that, and she wished they could use Mehmet, but that was out of the question because he probably alerted Turkish intelligence as soon as he saw Jim.